He was the best asset the syndicate had, an S-class alpha without peer, a phantom who slipped through the world's tightest securities. But the new assignment brought him to a dead stop, the file on the secure tablet making his blood run cold. Couldn't be him. He was an alpha. Now, the dossier claimed he was an omega. Caleb was ready to make him pay for the deception, to finally assert his dominance, only to find himself pinned to a mattress, a crushing wave of pheromones rendering him immobile. It was a world turned upside down, a lamb suddenly showing the fangs of a wolf. The day he presented as an S-class alpha had been a shock. That kind of genetic lottery was reserved for the sons of billionaires and political scions, not for an orphan shuffled through the foster system. He had even joked with the director of the group home, wondering if it meant he was secretly some long-lost heir. The director had only offered a thin smile and made a phone call. The next morning, Caleb was gone, spirited away to the syndicate's headquarters. He sat through the orientation in a daze, slowly processing that the kind man who ran his group home was a kingpin in a clandestine organization. His rare S-class designation made him an instant commodity, a prized weapon. The sudden spotlight was unnerving, and for some reason, it made him think of Ethan, his childhood rival, the one person who could always get under his skin. They had been magnets of opposing poles, constantly clashing, a source of endless frustration for the director. He remembered Ethan confiding in him years ago, a hushed whisper that he, too, had presented as an alpha. By all logic, Ethan should have been recruited by the syndicate as well, yet Caleb had never seen him. He figured it was a big organization. Their paths would cross eventually. Years of brutal training passed without a single sign of Ethan. On the rare occasions he saw the director, there was never time to ask. Now, Caleb was on his first solo field mission. The objective was morbidly simple: infiltrate the target's home, release a high concentration of pheromones to trigger a stress-induced rut, and collect the resulting glandular secretions. A high-tech predator. He never understood the purpose, not really. The syndicate's training regimen was intense enough to forge assassins, but their primary business seemed to be this strange, invasive collection. Caleb didn't ask questions. He was a soldier repaying a debt to the only family he'd ever known. He took mission after mission, a numb routine until a new file appeared. The target's face in the photo was obscured by a digital glitch, a first. He zoomed in, intrigued. The name was Ethan Shaw. The surname meant nothing, but the first name struck him like a physical blow. A coincidence, he told himself. It had to be. This was an S-class assignment, meaning the target was high value. But if he was an Omega, he stood no chance against Caleb's phenomenal onslaught. On a moonless, windy night, Caleb slipped over the electrified fence of a sprawling clifftop estate. The security was a fortress of laser grids and biometric scanners, far more advanced than the typical suburban mansions he'd breached. For the syndicate's top operative, it was a playground. He scaled the glass exterior and slid through a ventilation shaft, landing silently in the master suite. He crept towards the bed. His protocol was to flood the room with his scent immediately, the shock and pheromonal overload incapacitating the target upon waking. But as he looked down at the face illuminated by the distant city lights, the world tilted on its axis. He rubbed his eyes, disbelieving. The sharp jawline, the small, distinct mole at the corner of his right eye. It was a face seared into his memory. It was his goddamn rival. Ethan wasn't just an alpha. He was supposed to be his equal. Now he was listed as an Omega, living in a palace like this. Caleb's mind raced. Ethan must have found some wealthy alpha patron, living a life of pampered luxury. A bitter, hot fury coiled in his gut. His fists clenched. If Ethan's beloved alpha wasn't here tonight, then Caleb would be more than happy to take his place. He unleashed his pheromones, a wave of wild bergamot and cedar. Suddenly, the man on the bed shot his eyes open. In the same instant, a hand darted out, closing around Caleb's wrist like a steel manacle. Before Caleb could react, an overwhelming scent crashed over him. A deep, complex aroma of aged Cabernet and dark chocolate. It was an oppressive force, suffocating him, leeching the strength from his limbs. His knees buckled, but the hand on his wrist yanked him forward, sending him sprawling onto the bed, his head sinking into the plush pillows. Ethan loomed over him, his expression unreadable in the shadows. Caleb was utterly powerless, unable to move a muscle as the rich, intoxicating pheromones saturated the air, completely eclipsing his own. This was no Omega. No Omega in existence could overpower an S-class alpha like this. A mutated one, perhaps? Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through his shock. This was the first time in his career he had ever faced the possibility of failure. A ridiculous, terrifying thought, like a carrion bird cawing in his mind, screamed that he was in danger, that his pride and body were about to be forfeit. He was an S-class alpha, the apex predator. He should be the one on top. But the reality was a leaden weight in his limbs, a total, humiliating paralysis. His mask, at least, was still in place. Ethan wouldn't know who he was. His mind raced, desperately searching for an escape route, but the air was thick with a silent, menacing stillness. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice a low murmur. He noted the scent of bergamot, correctly identifying it as an S-class alpha pheromone. Caleb held his breath, refusing to make a sound. Ethan continued, his tone calm and unhurried, mentioning the recent string of incidents where Omegas were being forced into ruts late at night. The cases were often dismissed since no permanent bonding occurred. He wondered aloud if Caleb was the perpetrator, the little shadow causing all the trouble. Caleb internally scoffed at the ridiculous nickname, his jaw clamped shut. As if sensing his defiance, the Cabernet scent in the air intensified dramatically, like a spark hitting gasoline. Caleb's breath hitched, his body tensing as a strange, alien ache flared from the gland at the base of his neck. He had only ever heard of alphas inducing ruts in Omegas. He, an S-class alpha, was being pushed toward his own susceptibility. Ethan's voice was laced with a newfound curiosity as he leaned close to Caleb's neck, inhaling deeply. He remarked on how fragrant Caleb was and how impressive his resistance was. Anyone else would have broken by now. Ethan's tone was light, almost playful, as he suggested Caleb stay the night to atone for his misdeeds. It was said casually, but Caleb, even after all these years, knew Ethan was dead serious. The pheromonal pressure mounted. Caleb bit his lower lip hard, trying to stifle the whimpers threatening to escape. A fragment of information from a syndicate textbook flashed in his mind. S-class alphas were exceedingly rare, but there was another designation so scarce they were considered mythological. Their pheromones were purer, more potent, capable of even bonding an S-class alpha. Caleb's eyes narrowed, fighting to keep his sanity from unraveling. The syndicate had lied to him. Ethan wasn't an Omega. He was an enigma. A wave of despair washed over him. How could there be something higher on the food chain? He was supposed to be the one in control. Ethan's voice, now cheerful, broke the silence, asking why the little shadow was so quiet. Before Caleb could decide whether to speak, Ethan continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, promising that he would be making plenty of noise soon enough. Caleb's mind reeled. What the hell had happened to Ethan in the past few years? He couldn't believe this was the same rival from his youth, now so brazen with a complete stranger. Ethan declared that Caleb's silence was consent. With one hand, he effortlessly pinned both of Caleb's wrists above his head. His other hand snaked under Caleb's tactical shirt, his fingertips brushing against bare skin. An involuntary shudder racked Caleb's body. The gland in his neck throbbed painfully, an urgent, desperate plea to be bitten, to be claimed. In his dazed state, a flicker of guilt ignited. This helpless, violated feeling. This was what he had inflicted on all those Omegas. The process was agonizing even without the final act. He really was a monster. Ethan's actions pulled him from his spiraling thoughts. He was unbuckling Caleb's belt. That was the final straw. Caleb finally found his voice, a furious snarl. "Ethan, you goddamn pervert." A choked gasp followed as Ethan's fingers traced a line over his hip. Ethan hummed, amused. He remarked that his little shadow could speak after all, calling him by a name that made his blood freeze. Caleb. His mind went blank. He stammered, his body still betraying him with tremors of unwanted arousal, asking how he could possibly know. Ethan's eyes glinted in the moonlight as his hand continued its downward exploration. Caleb was powerless to stop him, his protests devolving into breathless pleas. A sudden static crackle came from the comms unit clipped to his ear. A surge of hope shot through him. He could call for backup. But in the next second, Ethan plucked the device from his ear and activated the speaker. A familiar voice filled the room, the eager tone of Leo, a younger alpha from the syndicate who always trailed after him, asking to be his partner. Leo asked if the mission was going smoothly, saying his own was done and he'd be waiting at the usual spot. Caleb opened his mouth to scream for help, but Ethan clamped a hand over it. The comms unit beeped as the call was disconnected and tossed aside. Ethan suddenly gripped his waist, flipping him onto his stomach. His face was shoved into the pillow, the air knocked out of him. A long-fingered hand slid under his neck, forcing his head up just enough to breathe. Ethan's breath was hot and ticklish against his nape. His voice was cold now, tinged with anger. He asked if Leo was his junior or his lover. The way he'd said they were waiting at the usual spot sounded far too intimate for Ethan's liking. Caleb's head spun, caught between the pain and the sheer absurdity of the situation. Ethan's teeth grazed his earlobe, sending a jolt through his entire system. He demanded an answer. Caleb could barely think, spitting out that Ethan was insane and needed to back off with the pheromones before he literally died. Ethan bit down gently on the cartilage of his ear. He promised Caleb wouldn't die. A temporary mark was all he needed. His body felt like it was at its breaking point. He no longer had the energy to listen, his voice breaking into a sob. He begged Ethan not to touch him, insisting that he was the one who was supposed to be on top. His words faded as his strength gave out completely, his body going limp, his face falling into Ethan's waiting hand. Before darkness claimed him, he managed to force out one last, venomous sentence through gritted teeth. "Ethan, if you dare touch me, I will hate you for the rest of my life." Birds chirped outside the window. Caleb opened his eyes, sitting up in a haze. His body felt surprisingly fine, and there was no mark on his gland. He scoffed. At least the bastard had some restraint. A metallic clink made him freeze. He looked down in horror. A chain was fastened around his ankle. Ethan's sleepy voice came from beside him, asking if he was awake. Caleb realized with a jolt that they were in the same bed. Looking closer, he saw he was dressed in a clean set of silk pajamas. Rage boiled up inside him, but the latent threat of the Enigma's pheromones kept him in check. He forced a smile, his voice dripping with false sweetness. He remarked that it had been a long time, and this was a strange way to treat an old friend. He shook his shackled foot for emphasis, the chain rattling accusingly. Ethan, still half asleep, yawned. He pointed out that their relationship was hardly friendly. Caleb pressed, asking what they were then. Ethan's eyes, dark and intense, met his. Nemesis. Caleb was baffled. Sure, they fought constantly at the group home, but nemesis? Had he done something so terrible to warrant that? The Omegas he targeted had a right to hate him, and he had apologized to each one after the fact. But Ethan? What right did he have? The more he thought, the angrier he got. He glared at Ethan, his voice cold, stating that he must have been mistaken about their history. Ethan held his gaze, and for a moment, Caleb felt a flicker of fear, a phantom memory of the previous night's helplessness. He quickly looked away. Ethan's attention shifted. He mentioned that Caleb's alpha friend had come looking for him last night with a team. Caleb's head snapped back. He asked what happened to them. Ethan sat up, leaning closer. Caleb instinctively recoiled, the chain pulling taut. "I killed them," Ethan said, his tone flat. Caleb's heart sank. He stared at Ethan, searching his face for any sign of a lie. "You're bluffing." A low chuckle escaped Ethan's lips. He seemed surprised that Caleb had such faith in him. Caleb fell silent. Subconsciously, he did believe Ethan wouldn't do that. Ethan shrugged, a wry smile on his face. He said that since Leo was Caleb's precious junior, he couldn't possibly harm him. He called him Little Shadow again. Caleb snapped at him not to use that name. A wave of relief washed over him. If Leo had died trying to save him, he would never have forgiven himself. Ethan's voice turned wistful. He asked if Caleb really cared that much about him. Caleb was confused. Of course he cared. Leo was his junior and he had come to rescue him. Only a sociopath would be indifferent. Ethan pressed, asking if Leo was just a junior. The question threw Caleb for a loop. What else would he be? Ethan didn't answer, but a bright, quick smile lit up his face. His mood swings were giving Caleb whiplash. He demanded to know what happened last night. Ethan explained that they had broken in and he had simply escorted them out. Caleb was skeptical, but then he remembered how effortlessly Ethan had subdued him. The thought brought a fresh wave of humiliation. He had fantasized about lording his rival's Omega status over him, only to be the one completely overpowered. Ethan stood, stretching lazily. He offered to make breakfast, telling Caleb he'd honed his cooking skills over the years. Caleb raised an eyebrow and pointedly jingled the chain on his ankle, asking if he was expected to eat in bed. Ethan grinned. Not a bad idea. Caleb told him to stop messing around and take the shackle off. It was digging into his skin. Ethan just laughed, telling him it was already unlocked. He called Caleb a gullible idiot, his tone affectionate, and turned to leave the room, saying breakfast would be ready when he came downstairs. The door clicked shut, leaving Caleb lying in bed. He had gone to all that trouble just to scare him. Who keeps functional shackles in their house? He cautiously tested his ankle, then spent some time exploring the vast, modern mansion. He noticed one room was securely locked, but figured a place this large was bound to have a safe room. When he reached the dining area, Ethan was setting down a plate with a bacon and chive omelet. Caleb felt a pang of disappointment, having expected something more lavish. He commented on the simple fare. Ethan shot back that it was that or nothing. Caleb's eyes lit up as he took a bite. It was perfect. He gave Ethan a thumbs up, remarking that after all these years, he still remembered his favorite. Ethan didn't respond, just watched him eat with an unnerving intensity. Just as Caleb was finishing, Ethan spoke. "Caleb, stay with me." Caleb nearly choked. He asked if Ethan was insane. Ethan's expression was dead serious. He said he meant it. Caleb, deflecting, asked if this massive house was his. Ethan replied that it could be theirs. His strange way of speaking was unsettling. Caleb remarked on his success, earning so much in just a few years. Ethan clarified it wasn't earned. It was inherited. It turned out the joke Caleb had made at the group home had come true for Ethan. Jealousy pricked at him. He fell silent, but Ethan began to talk. He reminded Caleb of the time he'd confessed he was an alpha. It turned out his initial tests had marked him as an omega, a result he never quite believed. The director had assigned him to work at an exclusive downtown club, where he caught the unwanted attention of a powerful executive. It was that night, under threat, that his enigma pheromones erupted for the first time. He was discovered by his now adoptive father, a man who saw his potential. He was a foster son, he explained, but the man's biological son had recently died in an accident that was kept out of the press. So to the outside world, Ethan had simply stepped into the role of Ethan Shaw. Caleb nodded, understanding. The chances of an orphan finding a wealthy biological family were next to none. Ethan's hand suddenly shot out, grabbing Caleb's wrist. His eyes were pleading. He told Caleb that the group home, the director, and the syndicate were all built on a lie. He begged him not to go back, not to leave him. Caleb was stunned. This wasn't something a nemesis would say. He asked what Ethan meant by a lie. He knew the syndicate's work was shady, but the director had explained the collection of omega secretions, taken under extreme duress, was for developing advanced pheromone-targeting drugs to help the public. A derisive laugh escaped Ethan. He said whatever they were researching, it wasn't medicine. The entire operation, starting with the group home, was a massive conspiracy. If not for them, Ethan argued, they both would have grown up in happy homes. Caleb wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. The director had taken him in off the streets, raised him. To believe he was a trafficker was almost impossible. Ethan, seeming to read his thoughts, sighed. He stood up, suggesting they drop it for now, and offered him a glass of milk, remembering his favorite brand. Caleb had planned to escape while Ethan was at work, but the man apparently didn't have a job. The envy was palpable. Ethan didn't bring up their morning conversation again, instead spending the day with him, a strange, domestic truce settling between them. That evening, he led Caleb to the locked room, a mysterious air about him. When he opened the door, Caleb saw a bedroom that was, by all accounts, perfectly ordinary, though the color scheme and design were uncannily to his liking. He turned and saw Ethan watching him, his expression full of naked anticipation. Caleb frowned, asking why he was staring. The question seemed to shatter Ethan's hope. The light in his eyes dimmed, and a strange, sour feeling twisted in Caleb's own chest. He had no idea why. "You don't remember, do you?" Ethan finally said, his voice flat. Before Caleb could ask, Ethan seemed to get angry, pushing him inside the room. "Fine, forget it. Ungrateful bastard. You're sleeping in here tonight." Caleb was secretly thrilled. He had expected Ethan to make him share a bed to prevent another escape attempt. But before his relief could settle, Ethan's voice turned menacing. "Don't even think about running. The shackles come in tighter models, you know." The threat was empty. Without the Enigma's pheromones, no one could stop him. He was already planning his escape. As he moved, he glanced down at the clothes he was wearing. They were new and fit him perfectly, a size that would be too snug for Ethan. The whole closet was filled with clothes his size. It was a testament to obscene wealth. Then a thought struck him, and his expression darkened. The room was pristine, clearly lived in. The clothes belonged to someone. They probably belonged to him. A surge of irritation washed over him. He shook his head and quickened his pace. On his way out of the city, he passed the old 24-hour diner he and Leo used as a rendezvous point. On impulse, he glanced inside. His heart jumped. Leo was sitting in a booth, alone. He hurried inside. "Leo? What are you doing here? Another mission?" The younger man's head snapped up. His eyes widened, and then filled with tears. He launched himself at Caleb, wrapping him in a fierce hug. Caleb was completely bewildered. Leo clung to him, burying his face in his shoulder. He sobbed that he thought he'd never see him again. Caleb patted his back, assuring him he was fine and it was time to head back to headquarters. On the way, Caleb asked about the previous night. Leo's face hardened with anger. He couldn't believe someone had bested Caleb, insisting he must have been ambushed. Caleb rubbed his nose, thinking it was less of an ambush and more of a complete miscalculation orchestrated by the syndicate itself. He pieced it together. Leo hadn't heard from him, assumed the worst, and mounted a rescue. Leo nodded vehemently, saying he knew Caleb would never stand him up. Caleb smiled at him, a genuine warmth spreading through his chest. He thanked him, saying he would have felt guilty for the rest of his life if anything had happened to him. Leo stared at him, his big eyes blinking, before letting out a whoop and trying to hug him again. Caleb held him off, remarking that two grown men hugging in public was a bit much. Leo agreed, then mentioned something strange. He said the masked man who fought them off was also an S-Class Alpha. He and his entire team were completely suppressed. Leo said he almost felt like he was going to die, but he knew Caleb was inside the house. The man had told them that no one was taking Caleb away. Caleb stopped walking. He asked Leo to repeat what the man had said. Leo thought for a moment, then recited the line verbatim. "I don't know who you are, but tonight, none of you are taking him from here." Caleb was speechless. That arrogant bastard. Leo continued, describing how powerful the man's pheromones were, how he could barely resist, and how the rest of the team was incapacitated. He asked if Caleb was hurt. Caleb looked away, his cheeks flushing. He mumbled that he was fine and they should keep moving. Back at headquarters, Caleb went straight to the director. The old man was silent for a long time, his stare making Caleb's skin crawl. He had intended to be direct, but the words caught in his throat. The director broke the silence first, asking where he had been for 24 hours. His tone was light, but his eyes were not. He cut off Caleb's stammered explanation, musing that he must have been captivated by a beautiful Omega. He noted Caleb's new clothes, suggesting he must have enjoyed himself thoroughly. Caleb's mind flashed to Ethan's face. Beautiful? Hardly. The director's easygoing tone disarmed him, and he laughed it off, denying it. But the director's grandfatherly smile was gone. Before Caleb could process the change, his world went dark. It felt as if his soul had been ripped from his body. As he collapsed, the last thing he heard was the director's cold command. "Take him away." When he came to, he was in darkness, the rhythmic drip of water the only sound. He was in a cell. Leo had mentioned the syndicate had a brig, but Caleb had never believed him. He leaned his head back against the cold, damp wall. He had never failed a mission. He knew there were punishments, but he never imagined this. It was terrifying to think the director could disable him so easily. He was glad he hadn't revealed anything about Ethan. The night wind whistled through a crack in the wall. Caleb stared up at the sliver of starry sky, his mind reeling. Was it all true what Ethan had said? Was the group home, the syndicate, all just a massive trap? If so, he had spent years as a willing tool for a monster. The director's cold face before he passed out was that of a stranger. This was the man he had seen as a father, the man he had respected, loved. Before he'd presented, the director would be the one to pull him and Ethan apart when they were fighting. He'd taught them crafts, taken them on picnics. Caleb remembered drawing a caricature of Ethan, and Ethan retaliating by plastering an ugly photo of Caleb everywhere. They had ended up wrestling in the grass until the director pulled them apart, sighing that they were like magnets, unable to stay away from each other. After presenting as an S-class, Caleb had become the director's prized possession, his favorite. His heart ached. If Ethan was right, all those memories were a cruel, twisted lie. A frantic whisper of his name pulled him from a light sleep. In the moonlight filtering through the bars, he saw Leo. He scrambled to the cell door, hissing for him to leave before he was discovered. Leo was even more panicked. He told Caleb that something had happened at headquarters, and he had to get him out. An intruder had breached the syndicate's defenses, a masked man. Before he could explain further, a lethal presence exploded from the darkness. Caleb felt a chill run down his spine. He instinctively shoved Leo's head down, shouting "A." But it wasn't a blade that struck. A wave of unseen force washed over them, and both he and Leo collapsed, their strength gone in an instant. The director emerged from the shadows, dressed in a pristine white lab coat, a grotesque smile on his once kind face. He tooted at Leo, then his gaze fell on Caleb. His eyes narrowed with murderous intent. He told Caleb he had learned his lesson and it was time to come with him. Caleb's lips moved, but no sound came out. The director stepped forward, kicked the unconscious Leo aside, and unlocked the cell. He grabbed a handful of Caleb's hair, yanking his head back. He purred that once he released the control, Caleb was to follow him obediently, without thinking or acting on his own. The sharp pull sent a fresh wave of agony through Caleb's already weakened body. He managed a pained nod. With a sharp click, his hands were cuffed behind his back. The director explained it was just a precaution. As his face was pressed against the gritty floor, a device in the director's pocket buzzed violently. He answered it, his voice ice. A panicked, intermittent voice came from the other end, reporting an intruder before being cut off by a scream. The director seemed unfazed, smashing the comms on the ground and muttering about useless subordinates. He grabbed Caleb's head again, but was interrupted by a burst of static from the broken device. A new voice, distorted but familiar, echoed through the cell. "Director, long time no see." Caleb's eyes widened. "Ethan." The director saw his reaction and sneered, grinding Caleb's face into the floor with his shoe. He hissed that Caleb had been a very bad boy. He had thought Caleb had just run off with an Omega, but instead he had brought this disaster to their doorstep. He twisted his foot, asking what kind of punishment he deserved. Caleb bit his lip until it bled, refusing to cry out. He couldn't let Ethan know he was in pain. If Ethan was attacking the syndicate head-on, he must have a plan. He couldn't jeopardize it. There was no room for sentiment anymore. The father-son bond had been a lie. He had only ever been a tool. The comms crackled again, and the director grew more arrogant, taunting Ethan, asking if his powerful father knew he was risking everything for his beloved Alpha. His tone dropped to a freezing threat. He told Ethan that his prize was under his foot, and if he came any closer, he would crush him. From the other end, frantic whispers could be heard, begging someone to calm down, that not just the hostages but their own men were suffocating. The director paused, muttering to himself, confused. He knew the Shaw heir was an Omega. Were they running similar experiments? A ghost of a smile touched Caleb's lips. Suddenly, the comms unit blared again. Ethan's voice came through, reciting a string of nonsensical code. As everyone paused in confusion, Caleb understood instantly. It was a cipher they had invented as kids. Translated, it meant, "Baby, release your pheromones. I'll find you." Ignoring the ridiculous pet name, Caleb bit through his lower lip. The sharp, blinding pain momentarily overrode the director's control. He unleashed every ounce of his pheromones, a suffocating cloud of bergamot and cedar filling the prison. The scent was so concentrated it turned bitter. The director whirled around, his face contorted in a mask of fury. He kicked Caleb with all his might, sending him flying into the bars. "Get away from me," he shrieked. Disgusting alpha stench. Caleb coughed up blood, the world dissolving into a blur of meaningless color before he slumped to the side, unconscious. When he awoke, he was in Ethan's arms, inside an armored vehicle filled with men in black tactical gear. He closed his eyes, pretending to still be out. Ethan's voice, raw and hoarse, whispered his name. Caught, he grunted in acknowledgement. Ethan's whole body seemed to relax as he gently pressed his forehead against Caleb's. "Thank God, baby." Caleb was too weak to protest the nickname. A burning pain radiated from his chest and throughout his body. He could see the raw anguish in Ethan's eyes. He was told they were almost at the hospital. On the way, Ethan explained everything. The syndicate had been dismantled, its key members arrested. The director, who never imagined Ethan could track Caleb's specific location by his pheromones, was captured. Ethan had his men beat him senseless, lock him in a room with 10 alphas on high-potency pheromones, then beat him again until he was barely clinging to life. Caleb listened, his heart a placid lake. The group home had been a front for a trafficking ring. Alphas were sent to the syndicate, while Omegas were sold to clubs and entertainment venues. The syndicate's research was far darker than he knew, part of a global criminal enterprise. And Ethan's adoptive father, Mr. Shaw, was a powerful, clandestine figure, a sort of vigilante mob boss who only targeted other criminals. Ethan assured him they weren't the bad guys. And then came the biggest revelation. Caleb's S-class assignment had been orchestrated by Ethan from the beginning. That was how he'd recognized him, despite the glitched photo. Caleb snorted and buried his face in Ethan's chest. Ethan apologized, admitting he should have been honest from the start, but he feared Caleb wouldn't believe him. He mumbled that he also hadn't expected Caleb to actually run away after he'd gone to the trouble of imprisoning him. Caleb turned and glared. Ethan immediately apologized again. The doctor said he needed to stay for a few days. During that time, Ethan seemed determined to become a master chef, bringing him a different gourmet meal every day. Lying in the hospital bed, his brain slowly recovering from the trauma, two questions surfaced. What were the glandular secretions for? And how had Ethan found the syndicate in the first place? But whenever he asked, Ethan would deflect, telling him not to worry about it for now. He asked about Leo. Ethan thought for a moment. Oh, him? He's fine. Cried his eyes out looking for you. I told him you were my mate. That shut him up. Caleb sputtered. Who the hell is your mate? Ethan shamelessly took his hand, pressing it to his cheek. You are Caleb. If he'd had the strength, he would have slapped him into next week. The day he was discharged, Caleb agreed to go back to the estate with Ethan, having nowhere else to go. That night, Ethan finally answered his questions. The secretions, harvested from omegas in a state of terror, were used to create mind control chips. The director's ambition was to flood the black market with them. And according to the syndicate's own researchers, Caleb had been implanted with the most powerful version, a liquid chip delivered through the free inhibitors provided at headquarters. A chill went down his spine. The researchers also said removing it was nearly impossible for an S-class alpha. A low-grade alpha could be cured by the final mark of an S-class. But for an S-class, the only cure, Ethan paused for dramatic effect, was to be marked by a legendary, world-endingly rare enigma. Caleb gave him a deadpan stare. So this was his endgame. Ignoring the implication, he asked again how Ethan had found the syndicate. Ethan led him to the locked room and opened the door. You really don't remember? He asked softly. This color scheme, the furniture, it's all based on things you told me you liked when we were kids. And the clothes in the closet. Whenever I saw something I thought you'd like, I bought it. The closet filled up before I knew it. It was hard not to be moved, but Caleb refused to be sidetracked. Thanks. So how did you find me? That night, Caleb surveyed his handiwork with satisfaction. Ethan was chained to the four posts of the bed, looking at him with wide, pathetic eyes. Baby, he pleaded. Caleb rolled his eyes. The bastard had dared to bite the inside of his thigh while he was unconscious, injecting a deep dose of his pheromones. He had discovered that an enigma's deep pheromones acted as a tracker, allowing them to pinpoint the location of anyone they'd marked who released a strong scent. No wonder they were so rare. The world would be chaos otherwise. He told Ethan that calling him daddy wouldn't help. That goddamn chip meant he had to be the one on the bottom, but he wasn't going to make it easy. Tonight, he was going to use his hands and mouth to drive Ethan to the brink of insanity and leave him there, chained and helpless. A wicked fire danced in his eyes. But what no one had ever told him was that an enigma's stamina was just as mythical as their existence. He was exhausted, and somehow Ethan had slipped his chains. In a flash, Caleb was pinned beneath him, the scent of Cabernet exploding around them. His angry protests were useless. During the marking, overwhelmed, he tried to escape, but Ethan just dragged him back by his ankle again and again, finally locking a shackle around it for good. He nibbled on Caleb's ear, whispering, "Silly Caleb. These are the tight ones." Caleb's cries were lost in the moonlight. He slept until noon the next day. When he woke, Ethan dropped another bombshell. He really was a long-lost heir, the son of a wealthy European family. Are you serious? You're not lying to me? Ethan leaned in and kissed his forehead. It's true. Your real name is Caleb Vance. The Vance family has been searching for you for years, never imagining you'd been taken overseas. I only found out after I took my father's position and saw the information they were circulating. It matched your childhood records perfectly. Caleb frowned. So you've known my real identity this whole time? Why didn't you tell me? Ethan's expression turned sly. Tell you? So you could run off and be a rich kid and leave me behind? No way. Caleb scoffed. You're an idiot. As if Ethan's eyes twinkled. He got up and went to the closet, purposefully opening a series of drawers before returning to the bed. He knelt on one knee, opening his palm to reveal a velvet ring box. Inside, a diamond glittered, impossibly brilliant. Caleb stared, speechless. Ethan's voice was soft. Besides, even if you did try to leave, you still need me to solve your little chip problem, don't you? The words "I would" that Caleb had been about to say after as if died in his throat.